All right, fifth graders, today we're going to talk about regrouping and reordering. Luckily, this is actually something we're very familiar with, and we've been doing it for a long time. But today we're going to start applying it to decimals. So we have the commutative property and the associative property. I have also posted videos in our digital classroom about the commutative and associative property if we want to dive into those a little bit deeper. Hopefully we're starting to kind of like pull this back from our brain. We did it last year. We've done it when we were younger, even with addition. I did post those extra videos though. So if you want to watch those, probably a good idea to watch them before today's assignment. That way you have all of this and both properties are dove into pretty deep. Again, we'll keep working on it. So if it's not, you're like, I don't quite remember that today. That's okay. We'll refresh your brain a little bit. So the commutative property of addition should be pretty familiar. A plus B equals B plus A. The best example I could give you on this one would be fact families, knowing that if we switch the numbers around, they don't change. So if we go back to maybe like our first grade math here, our commutative property would look something like, I know that 7 plus 3 is the same as 3 plus 7. Doesn't really matter if we switch them around, either way it's 10. If we go back to maybe like third, fourth grade, this might look something like 7 times 3 is the same as 3 times 7. They're both 21. It doesn't matter what order we put them in. So that commutative property is saying that with those fact families or with those groups, it doesn't matter what order your number goes in. It's still going to be the same answer. So if we take the commutative property and we look at number 1, 30,000 plus 20,000 plus 80,000 plus 49,000 plus 70,000. In my commutative property, I could switch all this around. I could say 20,000 plus 30,000 plus 80,000 plus 70,000 plus 49,000. Either way, it's going to be the same answer. It doesn't really matter what order they go in, as long as we're keeping them fact families or the groups of numbers the same, you're going to get the same answer. So quick review on the associative property. With our associative property, you'll notice here that this is where your parentheses come into play. So in this case, A plus B in parentheses plus C is the same as A plus B plus C. So let me give you some numbers to help you better process that. So let's use, I'm just going to use 3, 2, and 1 to keep it really simple. So we're going to say our A is 3, our B is 2, and our C is 1. I'm just going to give you those as examples above. So if I was to draw my parentheses and I was to say 3 plus 2, A plus B, plus 1, according to the associative property, would be the same as A, which is 3 right here, right? Outside of the parentheses, 3 plus, and then in our parentheses again, B and C are still 2 and 1. 2 plus 1. All right. So again, 3 plus 2 is 5. If I remember, parentheses come first. Plus 1 is 6. And then our parentheses are going to look a little different with different numbers on the right, because it'll end up being 3 plus 3 based on the way the numbers are switched around with the parentheses, but it's still 6. Again, we know that with PEMDAS, we have to do our parentheses first, our order of operations. This will change around with multiplication. Once you get multiplication into the mix, your parentheses inside and outside are going to make a difference. But with addition here, it doesn't matter. Yes, we have on this side 5 plus 1, the way that the parentheses worked out. And on this side, we have 3 plus 3 with the way that the parentheses worked out. Either way, it's still 6. So we can reorder these numbers and it doesn't make a difference. We're going to apply this today to our fractions and decimals. So I want to give you a good example. It says you can sometimes group or reorder numbers to help you use mental math more quickly. Explain how you use the commutative and associative properties to help you add mentally. A good way of explaining this is creating mental groups. We do this often without even thinking about it. And then you might sit back and go, oh my gosh, I do that all the time. So example here might be, for me, if I'm looking at number 1 here, my mental groups that I'm gonna pull out is, I know that 7 plus 3 is 10. I know that 8 plus 2 is 10. And then I have 49 left, or 49,000. So I might use my associative property here, and I might say, I know that 30 plus 70 is going to go in the parentheses here because that's familiar to me, plus 80 plus 20. And again, I apologize for how messy it is for me when I write on my computer. And then plus 49. So I would say something like, well, I use the associative property because I created groups of numbers in parentheses that I know add up to 10 in our fact families. Doesn't matter what order I put these in. I could do 70 plus 30 plus 20 plus 80 plus 49, or I could do 80 plus 30 plus 70 plus 20 plus 49, still the same answer. But we're gonna work on these mental strategies today. So a good example down here is if I was to go to number 4, I would definitely pull out our common denominators. I would pull out my sixths. I would pull out my fourths. And then my 11ths, I'd probably just hang out by itself because it doesn't have any partners there. So if I was to go through this, I would most definitely use my mental math to do 1 6 plus 5 6 first. Knowing they already have a common denominator, there's no reason to switch this around and make it any harder. Plus, and now I see here 3/4 and 1/4. Pull those out. Those are already the same. And then again, we set our 5/11ths. That guy doesn't have a partner, doesn't have any other 11ths, so he's just going to hang out by himself here. And what's funny is now that I have put my parentheses up, I've noticed that 1 6 plus 5 6 is 1 whole. 3/4 plus 1/4 is 1 whole. And then I have my 5/11ths. So I actually have 1 plus 1 plus 5/11ths. So it'd give me 2 and 5/11ths. Today isn't so much about going through the math and getting the exact answer. It's really about working through the mental math process. You being able to explain your steps. Why did you add those first? Why did you add those next? Why did you add those last? And finding those groups. If I was to go to 2 here, I would say, okay, immediately my groups, I'm noticing. I might even hide my zeros. We've been working on that hide your zeros. If I was to only look at 1s and 10ths, I notice that I have 2 plus 3, which is 5, plus another 5. So I can create those mental groups. So maybe for me, I'm saying, okay, I have 1 and 5/10ths. And then I notice that I have 1 and 2/10ths plus 1 and 3/10ths, which is another 1 and 5/10ths. So again, there's no really right or wrong answer to this today. It's how you see it and how your brain works. And this is just really good practice for you to start creating those mental groups in your head to make it just a little bit easier on yourself. And also, as you go through this, you're going to see a lot of decimals on top of each other. And rather than panicking, pull them into groups. Pull out those groups that you already know instead of trying to add 1 by 1 by 1 by 1. The distributive property, again, we've seen it. I also posted a video to our classroom. The distributive property is our rainbow multiplication. We've talked about this before. I know that A times B plus C is the same as A times B plus A times C. Again, sounds super confusing. All you're doing is you're taking A and distributing or giving it out. Again, distributive property, to distribute means to give out. So if you look at our answer, let's look at number 8 for a better example here. So 7 times 25 plus 7 times 75. I have pulled these two apart, right? But 7 has been distributed to both numbers. So I could really rewrite this as 7 times 25 plus 75. Knowing that I love to call this rainbow multiplication because he's jumping over to both. Knowing my 7 has to be multiplied to 25 and to 75. Whatever number is in front of the parentheses has to be distributed to both numbers. Again, this video is also in our virtual classroom, so if you need a review with that. So today, mental math is our focus, using what you already know. This shouldn't be anything new. It should be things we already know. We might have forgotten some of it. But again, we're going through these 3 properties. So I want to go back just to our top to quickly review. So our commutative, think of it as our fact families. We can swap numbers out. It doesn't matter the order. Our associative is also with addition, saying that with addition, it doesn't matter where our parentheses are. Distributive all of a sudden changes because now we're multiplying. And basically what we're saying is that number in the front has to be multiplied by all the numbers after in the parentheses. So today, create your mental groups, use what you already know, and then review the 3 properties in our virtual classroom.